I always loved the woods by my house growing up. Whenever I was out for a run, I'd always make a point of burning off a few miles through them. Now, whenever the holidays roll around and I smell pine, I'm not transported back to my very first Christmas, footy pajamas and all. I'm back in those woods, alone, surrounded by my thoughts and those giant trees. I haven't been back in almost 20 years. Back then, I was training for a half marathon. I had gotten a run in earlier that morning, but I still had that itch for the trails in the afternoon, so I laced up and took off down the road behind my house. At about the halfway point of my usual run, asphalt transitioned to a dirt road that led to the entrance of the woods. It had been raining all day and continued as I tried to take minimal cover in the canopy of trees. The crunch and squish of twigs and gravel underfoot provided enough mental distraction from the burning in my legs. It was a good half hour before I had the idea to head back. It wasn't getting dark yet, but I knew myself well enough to know that it could be pitch black before I knew, lost in the high of my run. I knew the main paths of the wood fairly well, but without the light to guide me, I'd be fumbling around in the dark for hours. I was using a nearby tree to work out the tightness in my hamstrings when I saw it. A bobbing red light. Like someone stuck a Japanese lantern over a balloon. My first thought was young kids. These woods were big enough to hide a lot of things, including idiot kids who stole booze from their parents' liquor cabinets and family guns from the hiding places their fathers swore them to secrecy over. Stolen booze, stolen guns, and if they were feeling really excitable, both at the same time. I usually try to leave things well enough alone, but a few weeks back a local kid had blown a few fingers off. The hard ass in me thought it'd teach them a lesson, but my conscience knew it might not just be a few fingers this time. I relaced my shoes, flipped up the hood of my sweater, and made my way towards the red light. I tried to be as quiet as possible. Kids were twitchy with Dad's clock. Last thing I needed was to compete with a bullet hole in my leg. I tried to follow at a safe distance, but I couldn't make out who held the light. I glanced up at the sky. Dark, but I still had more than enough time to wrap this up. Wait till they'd gotten ready to start target practice. Make sure I found cover behind a thick tree. Then scream like a Looney Tune and freak 'em out enough that they scatter. Once the coast was clear, I hightail it home. My civic duty. As I peeked out from behind some trees, the light had disappeared. Just up and vanished. I crouched down and started to carefully maneuver my way to where I saw the light last. Looking around, I rubbed my burning thighs. I saw the terrain slope down into a tiny clearing. I'd never been this deep in the wood before. As I stared down into the small clearing, I noticed what looked like small stones jutting out of the ground. They littered the clearing. As I squinted, I could make out names and dates. A graveyard. Judging by the dates, a pretty old one. I was about to get up and explore, but then the bobbing light popped back into existence, followed by an identical one, then another, and another, and another. A perfect circle of lights. They just kind of floated there. No booze, no guns, no kids. Just the lights bobbing up and down hypnotically. Then the voices started. It was almost like singing, but there was something wrong about it. Low and steady, like it came from somewhere deep and dark. The more I listened, the more a very clear, very strong message was fired at my brain. I shouldn't be here. I tried listening to my instincts, but my legs finally gave out after everything I put them through today. I held my hand over my mouth to stifle my pained grunts. I'd give myself a minute to get my legs back, then get the hell out as silently as possible. Working my legs over with my hands, I could feel them coming back to normal. I was all set to crawl, but curiosity got the better of me. As slowly and quietly as I could, I peered over the log I had hunched myself behind and looked down into the clearing. The lights had stopped moving. They just stood there, hovering, still. Then, like synchronized swimmers, they moved. Their circle shrunk smaller and smaller until they surrounded one of what I guessed to be the headstones. The singing grew louder. All the lights started to bob again, but it was different this time. Not like fishing lures in calm water, more like ping-pong balls volleyed back at blinding speed. The lights started to blur. They were moving up and down so fast. I couldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, an observer of something I was never meant to see. A tearing sound was heard, and a small girl appeared in the center of the lights. She had a strange sheen to her, like she was underwater. She looked like she was just waking up. Once her eyes had focused, terror shone clear as day on her face. The lights worked quickly. Beams of scarlet shot out like so many tentacles and wrapped around the girl. She seemed to scream, but no sound was heard. The singing was so loud. The light started to close in on her, the beams coiling tighter and tighter around her tiny limbs. "No!" I shouted. Everything stopped. The singing died abruptly. The lights stood still. In the brief moment of distraction, the little girl wrenched her arms and legs up and slammed them down, freeing herself. As quickly as she had appeared, she vanished. It was in the silence and my relief of the girl's escape that the dread set in. The bobbing lights hadn't moved, but I could feel the warmth of red light shining directly on me. A single, solitary voice was heard from inside the clearing. I turned around and ran for my life. Branches stung my face as I flew by. I had to get out. I frantically scanned the woods for the main path. It was so dark now. Everything looked the same. The singing started up again. I could feel the lights gaining on me. A car honk. The entrance. Pure adrenaline pushed my exhausted legs out of the tree line and onto the main dirt path. I glanced back out of fear as I sprinted away. The lights all bobbing there stopped right at the entrance to the wood. As the scene grew smaller and more distant, I could see each light slowly stop moving and vanish. I sprinted all the way home. I had to eat the fee for the half marathon. Hard to realistically compete, let alone jog, on 2 torn calves. I cheered on the sidelines, handing out water bottles to what would have been my competition. I had to change my running route. It was a pain trading my quiet and solitude for suburbia's barking dogs and screaming kids, but I made it work. Up until the day I moved, I never went back to those woods. Whenever friends would try to get me in there when the weather turned nice, I'd make up some weak excuses. Allergies, too much work to catch up on, anything. That was 20 years ago, and I still think about it at least once a day. I guess some things you just can't forget no matter how much you try. I was thinking about it the other day when I was walking to work. I'd been in the city for almost 2 decades, and it was nice that I could walk everywhere. One of the problems walking everywhere was you end up getting absorbed in your own little world. You're not paying attention, specifically to traffic lights or crosswalks. I'd taken a step onto the street when a firm hand grabbed me by the shoulder and jerked me back. I stumbled backwards onto the sidewalk. Flat on my butt, I could see the truck that careened right through the space I was in at top speed, swerving all over the road and crash head-on into a fire hydrant. A few people helped get me back onto my feet. A crowd had formed. First for me, then for the crashed truck. I asked around to see if anybody saw who pulled me out of the street. Nobody seemed to know. I looked around and out of the corner of my eye, swore I saw someone. A young girl. Looked like she had just come out of a pool. When I turned to get a better look, she was gone. I ran to the corner I thought I saw her in and rounded it to see if I could catch another glimpse of her. But nothing. Asking around, no one seemed to have seen her. Having left my briefcase at the corner, I went back. In all the chaos, I hadn't even gotten a good look at the truck that almost put me 6 feet under. I almost threw up when I finally got to see it. It was from a moving company, apparently. Right above the name was the symbol. A smiling, bobbing, red ball.